Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
It's rebound week, baby. It's time. It's time to get over all that. You were in a terrible mood. We were just talking about that offline. You were in a terrible mood for the post game. You already look in a better mood. I'm glad to have my Greg back.
Yeah, I could lie and say that I wasn't bothered by that game, but yeah, I was pretty bothered by that game. And the great part is now it's time. People could see my tweets coming out. I found all the different tidbits. I found the 38-3 thrashing that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took from the Saints last year. I found last year's Steelers game that Josh had, and that, hey, one team had a special teams or defensive touchdown and won like 20 something to 15 something. Like, hey, it was pretty much the same game, and he had a pretty great year last year. I've told myself all the things I need to be told, and I'm ready. I'm ready for this game and excited for where it's going to take us. And I think that it's something that you have to be able to work your way through, and that's what we're here for. So we are on to Miami. We are ready to roll. Before we get started, excited for tonight as always. We are presented by our friends up at Uncle Jumbo's. Going to get into our spotlight player later on today, but a new sponsor for today, someone that we're really excited to be working with here, a local business in the area there. Colby Development is a commercial real estate company offering a variety of services in the Buffalo area. Colby's customer-centric approach makes your commercial real estate experience gratifying and memorable. With projects grand or small, Colby Development is your strategic partner. And like the Buffalo Bills trying to develop their young talent, Colby Development can be there to be able to help you with all kinds of things. And now for anyone in the business world, you know the challenges of looking for space and finding areas to work and being able to look and find the right space for your business. Check out our friends over at Colby Development. They'll help you out and get you pointing in the right direction. But for tonight, without further ado, our man, you've seen him before. He's been on with us before. The executive vice president and host of DolphinsTalk.com, Tom Ernisse. Tom, how we doing, man? It's, we need to be fair. We want to go that, it's not often that the Dolphins are standalone, sole owners of first place in the AFC East. The Bills lost, the Dolphins win. I need to give you a moment to bask in that glory. And that moment's over. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
1 week. It's only 1 week.
No, hey, it is funny what that does for pressure, and we'll talk about those things. But talk about it. It was great to see a tough, hard-fought win against a great coach and a great team. How are you feeling after week one?
Relieved, actually. Last year in 2020, I had the Dolphins winning in New England. They got destroyed by Cam Newton and the Patriots run attack. And I said the same thing this year. I think they were going to go into New England and beat them. They did. Fortunately enough, they have a all-pro corner in Xavier Howard that can make a play when it mattered, and stripping the ball inside the 10-yard line was the ultimate play. And I said it on one of my shows this week that how hard is it to win in New England as Bills fans, as guys that cover the Bills, how hard it is to win in New England. That team was 139-25 going into the season in Foxborough from 2002. That's such an insane stat, and that just is a tip of the hat to Brian Flores and having his team just grit out another win.
I got a question about that win because watching that game back and then looking at the box score a little bit, almost every indication of that felt like New England probably should have come out on top of that game. But I think Miami allowed New England to beat themselves a little bit, forced New England to beat themselves a little bit with some of the turnovers like you had mentioned. Yep. Do you think this has been sort of a staple of these Brian Flores teams where you let opponents beat themselves and you try not to make a lot of mistakes and like not allow Tua to get out of control and make mistakes? Is this still the formula for the Dolphins to win, is to allow teams to beat themselves? Or is this a team that can now come out and beat teams, or is week one a liar and this is just a weird game?
I think we'll see. I'm going to continue to trust Brian Flores and Josh Boyer with their defensive schemes every single week. I think the game plan was against New England. They kept giving Mac Jones everything underneath. They took away everything over the top. They had two safeties that looked like that they were free to roam anywhere they want, kept everything in front of them. And Mac Jones had a lot of throws inside 10 yards, and the Dolphins, for the most part, was very good at tackling and getting the guys in the open field. They let the Patriots work inside the 20s. but once they got into Miami territory in the 20, they took it all away. And it definitely allowed the Dolphins to hold the Patriots to 3 field goals, 1 for 4 inside the red zone. And honestly, that's where the game is won, is in the red zone. Can you cash in when you hit the opponent 20? And they held them a 25% touchdown rate, and that really was the game.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's some curiosity on our side how much of what we saw was a rookie quarterback, did McDaniels have the training wheels on for Mac Jones, and how much of that was dictating that performance. And we'll kind of start at the back end and work forward, because obviously I think that's the focus of how the Dolphins have built this team. And I know obviously, Howard and Jones are going to get a lot of the attention, and adding somebody like McCourty, but I was pretty impressed with Javon Holland. I didn't know that I was going to see that kind of performance from a rookie. Was that something that, was he getting the drum beat or a buzz through camp, or was that kind of a breakout surprise for Dolphins fans?
There was a lot of buzz with Holland in training camp. He seemed to be the guy. He was working with a lot of the first teamers during camp. We saw a lot of action from him in the preseason, and the kid lays the lumber. And you saw that with the Jonnu Smith hit. He just came in and just laid him out. And I mean, Jonnu Smith looked like he was on a ride.
Yeah,
the way he flew through the air and the ball just fell out of his hands. That was such a good hit. But on top of that, he's a smart kid, and I think they're really working him and McCourty together. McCourty's giving him some guidance on how to play the position in the NFL. I think we'll see a change maybe down the road, but obviously the vets got to keep playing. But Javon Holland, I love the pick in the draft, and he paid dividends in week 1.
Well, and obviously, the intelligence that McCourty brings and everything there was something I wasn't super excited about when you have the talent that was already there with Howard and Jones. And I know that didn't always translate in last year's matchups, where obviously Stephon Diggs got the better of guys, and it wasn't always like right on X or people like that. But overall, they were able to scheme it up. Do you think? I'm curious, because Aaron and I are both big fans of Brian Flores and don't like what good of a coach we think he is down in Miami. Do you think we're going to see, hey, we think we've made enough tweaks, adding somebody with the intelligence of McCourty, adding the athleticism of Holland, and now maybe a little bit more push up front, and we're going to stick with what we do because we have the talent to do it? Or do you think, hey, okay, they got us on some of the man coverages last year, that we tried to go a little bit more zone in the second matchup, and that didn't translate here, so we're going to try X? Do you think they're going to mix it up, or do you think that the talent changes maybe give them more confidence to stick with the coverages that we saw or see in most matchups from the Dolphins?
Well, they definitely have to make the changes, because what they did last year didn't work at all against Buffalo. And Josh Allen has had the Dolphins number for the last 4 or 5 starts against this team. And Brian Flores, I think, is good enough to know that he needs to change up the coverages, and he just can't be proud and just say, yeah, we're going to blitz you 54% of the time in the game and leave our guys on an island with guys like Diggs, Beasley. Those guys absolutely torched us underneath, over the top. They have to be smarter. I'm hoping Brian Flores really looks at what Mike Tomlin did last week and really played more zone defense and took away, a lot of those options that the Bills did so successfully last year. And I'm hoping that he really looks at that game plan and says, all right, let's play some zone. Let's keep everything in front of us. And the same kind of concept against the Patriots. If you keep it in front of you, wrap your guy up, make the tackle, force into field goal situations, and get your offense going.
So I know obviously that the Bills aren't the team to take advantage of it. I think that if you're going to pick a weakness on this Dolphins defense, it's probably the linebacker group. I think that the secondary and the front are stronger between the three. The Bills with Devin Singletary, Matt Breida, Dawson Knox, that's not their bread and butter. Is that something where you think they're going to disguise it? I saw last week, and obviously just watching it through in the condensed version and then looking at the snap counts and things, they certainly are leaning heavily on that secondary and on the rotation there. Do you think they're going to continue to go that direction of almost some pseudo dime looks at some, looks like in some setups, or do you think that they'll try to mix in some of the younger guys that they brought in?
I think they got to They definitely have to mix in Javon Holland because his athleticism, his speed in the game definitely can pay dividends on the back end. McCourty's not a spring chicken. He's 34 years old. You can't have him on an island one-on-one in his own coverage with Stephon Diggs running past him. You just can't have that happen, or Gabriel Davis for that matter. I think he is going to mix and match. I think he's going to, go into the game and try to play a little bit of a chess match with Brian Dable to see what Dable's bringing to the table, what adjustments he made from week 1 to week 2. Obviously, Dable's going to look at what he did successfully, which was quite a bit against the Dolphins defense in that week 17 game, and bring that probably right away would be my opinion, just to kind of put the defense to a test. And, I don't know what the game plan has to be, but they have to be better than they have been in the last couple of games against Buffalo. That's the bottom line.
Certainly. And I think, one of the areas I was most concerned with was, Dolphins continuing to add talent to that front. You saw what the Bills struggled with last week. Obviously, I think losing that mammoth human of Raekwon Davis is a shot. But still having Wilkins, adding in, Jalen Phillips obviously was a huge target for us in the draft and a big fan there. And I think fans really underestimate how consistently good Emmanuel Ogbah is. I think that a guy gets off to maybe a slow start in their career and you kind of get a label. I think people really underestimate how good he was last year. He was a really good football player. And I think, again, right off the bat, comes right back with a big game this first week. Do you think they'll be able to make up for, I don't think people know a lot about Adam Butler and John Jenkins, trying to fill in for Davis there, but how do you think that's going to impact what their plans were versus how they're going to try to now replicate? Nobody has a Cam Hayward, but being able to put Wilkins more into that role to try to disrupt what we saw last week.
Yeah, I think just based off training camp and some of the things we saw last week against New England, I think they really want Wilkins to continue to improve and get better. His first rookie year, he hit the rookie wall. Last year he was much better. I think he's off to a good start this year. They have to figure something out. John Jenkins is a good rotational guy. He's not an every down player. The Adam Butler signing was for a reason. He played with Brian Flores in New England, and I think he brings a little bit more oomph to that front. And can he get enough pressure on the inside? Maybe. Haven't seen it yet. They haven't used him enough. But losing Raekwon Davis is a huge blow to the run defense. And, that pressure right up the gut. The best way to collapse a pocket is, get pressure right up the middle. And Raekwon Davis could move mountains. And now that they lost him, Brian Flores he does not like to divulge how serious an injury is, but based on body language and, everything else, it doesn't seem good. So they have to figure it out. They have to be able to get, those other guys, John Jenkins and Adam Butler, they have to be able to replicate. You got to, if you can replicate one guy with two guys at this point, that's what they have to do. But I'm not confident yet. We'll see what happens on Sunday.
I know our man Joe Marino, the host of the Locked On Bills show, has always talked about, he's met Shaq, he's met other professional athletes, he's been doing scouting for a while. Raekwon Davis is the most intimidatingly large human he's ever met in his life. He's just massive. Like, it's hard to grasp how huge of a man he is. So it's someone that, obviously not when they play the Bills, but a player that I like to watch and it was enjoyable. So you hate to see anybody get injured.
Yeah.
I'm going to take over here for a minute, Tom, and we're going to get right out of the gate here with the offense. Let's talk about them. Bills have been here before, and I see Dolphins Twitter. I follow you and a number of other guys, and the back and forth of Tua and the polarizing player that he is within your fan base. What type of summer did Tua have as an insider here, and what did you see from him here in this first week, and how do you feel about him being the leader of this team here going forward, assuming no Deshaun Watson trade comes in while we're recording this?
Yeah. The summer was good. Everything out of camp was that Tua was very good, and he's getting the ball out of his hand quick. He's making good reads. His downfield accuracy is much improved. He's got more command of the offense, more command of the huddle. He's a leader based on, the team, Brian Flores, and everybody that's was able to watch him at camp was basically saying, he's a completely different guy from year 1 to year 2. I've seen it, in the preseason. Obviously, he looked good. He was good in regards of his reads. But the whole part of this offense is RPO, and that's what he ran at college, and that's what they designed the offense around is quick hits and let the guys do things in the open field. That's why they bring in a guy like Will Fuller, who gets his first game this week for the regular season. And you bring in a guy like Jalen Waddle. He's very familiar with him. We saw that connection last week. There's a comfort level there. And obviously the comfort level with Devontae Parker is there, allowing him to go up and high point the ball and make a play. Regarding confidence, I'm confident in Tua. I've been confident in Tua, since he's come in. I think Patrick Mahomes ruined a lot of young quarterbacks for every franchise going forward.
Us too, yeah.
That you're supposed to have a all-pro quarterback within his first 2 starts of his career.
Yeah.
Tua's progression from last year to this year is still young. He's only 10 games into a career.
And he's what, 7-3 in those?
He's technically 7-3.
Not that I don't want Bruce Nolan to remind me. QB wins aren't a stat, but
keeping wins aren't a stat. But he's doing things to not lose football games for the most part. Did he do it last week? Yes, he almost cost the Dolphins the game with that errant pass late in the game when they were up by 1, and they started getting some momentum moving the football, and he turned it over. But those are things that you look at the film. You got to learn how to not heave the ball up, but get that ball immediately out of bounds when you feel pressure. You're outside the pocket, make the throw out of bounds, move on, live another day, punt the ball away, make the Patriots drive the field versus starting inside the 45-yard line. Fortunate enough that it worked out that they ended up winning the game, but he did a lot of good things last week too. The RPO was working well. He was quick with his reads. He was accurate with the ball when he had the correct read, and he scored touchdowns. And winning in Foxborough it doesn't matter. If you're opposing quarterback, you go into Foxborough and you win a football game, that's a plus for me.
Yep. Now, before we kind of get away from Tua, and this might segue into another part here of the offense, there's a big jump off when I see Tua, and it shows up both when you're watching the game and it shows up when you're looking at the stats getting ready for this. Tua's sort of like all quarterbacks, and we saw it happen with Josh Allen here last week. When pressured, his numbers go down dramatically, but it's not when blitzed. He's actually a pretty good quarterback when you blitz him. That's not really the way to generate pressure. It's bringing 4 and getting pressure, but it's pretty substantial. He goes from like 60+% completion percentage to very low completion percentage when he's pressured. What is going on there? Is that more makeup of the sort of rotation that you guys have had at offensive line and the level of players on the offensive line versus Tua himself and being able to deal with pressure?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I'm not going to put full blame on an offensive line, but this line has not been good since I think the Wildcat year of 2008.
We're familiar with poor guard play.
Yes, it hasn't been good, but when I looked at the the pressure count from last week, it came from Michael Dieter, obviously now playing center. He was a afterthought after 2 years on this team. He was an afterthought as a rotational guy in case someone went down, and he jumps in to be the starter at center, and right tackle last week was a problem. 50% of the pressures came from the right side, which is to his blind side, which you need to be able to protect him. I liked what Liam Eichenberg did last week at left tackle. Austin Jackson is bound back playing left tackle per Brian Flores. Is
Eichenberg going to kick into guard, you think, this week?
I think he's going back as a backup tackle.
Okay.
At this point.
Really?
Yeah.
So what are we looking at for guard here starting with this week?
Guards are going to be Solomon Kinley and Robert Hunt. Kinley, I thought, had a good game last week.
Both monstrous guys.
Yeah, big, huge guys on the whole front.
Yeah, they can definitely move guys around. It's just the consistency of doing that. I'm hoping to see a better result from Michael Dieter this week. I hope Kinley and Hunt, both in their second year, continue to progress in the right direction. I would love to see Liam Eichenberg at right tackle. I really would. I just don't think we're going to see it this week. I think he.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
And the last thing I was going to say is that Tua does have his inconsistencies, just like a young quarterback. When he feels the heat, he feels like he has to try to make a play, and that's been his MO in college. Is he's always looking for the play. Sometimes he's just got to learn how to eat it, and and take a sack. Not a vicious sack, but he needs to learn how to take a sack, and get out of harm's way and live another day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes Josh is still learning that, but, that was one of the things I'm looking at this matchup, and there's a couple things that are keeping me up a little bit with this offense, because I do think it's a little bit more dynamic than Bills fans want to give Miami credit for, and especially some of the interesting depth that you guys have built here. And I look at this offensive line and the size, and I look at sort of Bills have a bit of an undersized defensive line, and I don't love that matchup. And then I look, this is a well-balanced offense. Last week, your snap count was 30 passes, 24 runs. So that's about 60-40. That's 56-44 run-pass ratio. So you're going to run the ball. I like Gaskins a lot. I like Malcolm Brown quite a bit. And I like Ahmed coming out and his ability to catch the ball. Do you look at this Bills matchup and know that the cornerback and safety depth that they have, do you think that we're going to see a real push to try to get those big guys up front to make a push in the run game and attack the Bills up front? That's been an Achilles heel here of Sean McDermott defenses for a while.
Well, no, I think in the first, I want to think in the first matchup, they did have some success running the ball. When you get down by like 5 scores in the second game in December, you can't really run the ball very much.
Right.
I like the idea of the Dolphins establishing a ground game, because what's the most important thing with a run-pass offense? RPO. You have to be able to run it. So if you get the team to bite on the play fake, now you have a one-on-one matchup on either on a quick slant or maybe an in route or whatever, and you're able to start dictating how this game is going to go. So I'd like to see them get out there, establish a ground game, and then Tua is going to be aggressive. That's just how he has been. At least in last week, he had top 10 numbers in regards of aggression of throws, air yards, intake air yards. He was in the top 10. So I think he's going to want to push the ball down the field, but at the same time, I think they are going to have him try to establish more of a ground game to try to keep Buffalo off balance, which will allow a little bit more of the RPO to work.
Yeah. Now, this is one that is really keeping me up at night, obviously. I'm a supporter, as you know, of Levi Wallace. He's had a rough time against Parker, specifically in the past, and I don't love the idea of a matchup with Jalen Waddle going up with Levi. Those were two guys that really exposed the flaws of a Levi Wallace and really the Bills cornerbacks in general, the lack of size and athleticism, the ability to high point balls and play the point of the catch. One thing I'm interested, though, and I look at the way you guys spread out these wide receivers, right? You're in 11 personnel. That's 3 wide receivers, 48% of the time last week. You're not really in 10 personnel. You're getting Will Fuller back here. You have a nice deep core of wide receivers here. But just, for fans here to run it down, we saw snaps. Parker had 45 last week, Waddle 43, Albert Wilson had 22. Where does Fuller fit into that, eat into that? Is he just taking Albert Wilson snaps? Albert Wilson's still a good player. Is that going to be a split between those guys? What should we expect to see of who's going to be out there? Who's going to be the primary targets? Is Waddle going to eat into Parker's a little bit more as the primary guy as the season goes on? This is sort of the problem that you develop when you have this much depth in different types of players at a position like this. I'm interested to see and hear from you how they plan on managing all these potential weapons.
I think for at least week 1, I think Fuller is going to be worked in slowly. He did not have much in regards to practice time in training camp. He didn't play in the preseason. He's suspended for week 1. So being away from the team, not being able to practice or being on the field, nursing an injury, I think they're going to work him in. I don't think he's going to eat a lot of snaps. maybe 10 to 20 snaps I would see for Will Fuller. But Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker are going to be the guys with some sprinkles in of Albert Wilson. I think, Albert Wilson is very underestimated. He had a really good run in 2018 before that hip injury. 2019 just wasn't himself because of the hip injury that he suffered in 2018 and opted out of 2020. I think he's going to be slept on. I think he's going to be a good guy to watch in the slot. I think the Dolphins are going to try to put some mismatches on your linebackers to use the speed of a Waddle or a Albert Wilson or maybe a Fuller to try to expose something there to maybe open up a downfield throw to Parker.
And so then I guess we have to talk about Mike Gesicki. He's a player I love. I hate this matchup for the Bills.
Off to play the fourth most tight end snaps last week.
Yeah, what happened last week with Gesicki?
I think two things. Number one, Bill Belichick is very good about taking away option one.
Sure.
And he schemed for him. And I think number two, I think the Dolphins really ran him as a decoy to try to get some things open underneath. That's just personal opinion. I don't know if that really was their game plan, but not having him touch the football was kind of surprising.
I'm praying he's in the doghouse because he's eaten us alive for 2 years now.
I really think it was more of a schematic thing with Bill Belichick by taking him out of the game because he's so good about doing that and taking away option one to force you to win with option 2, 3, and 4. And Gesicki really is our number one guy. I think he's so electric. He can high point the ball. He's very good in the middle of the field. He's not afraid to take a hit. He's got tremendous hands. I want to see a lot from him this week because, like you said, he has been able to eat against Buffalo, and he makes some big plays, and I'd like to see it happen this week.
When's
I'm
Baby
not
Gronk
bitter
back?
that I had him in my lineup with 0 points at all. I'm not bitter about that.
When's Baby Gronk, Shaheen back? He was on the COVID list, right?
Yeah, he's on the COVID list. We should see him potentially back, even though he's unvaccinated with like Cole Beasley. He's unvaccinated. Okay. So when he went on the COVID list, he's out 10 days.
10
so
days,
I believe his time is up tomorrow is the 10-day mark. So we should potentially see him back.
But when he's back, in addition to this, my brother's a Bears fan. And so this was a guy he was always calling me, telling me like, oh, they just haven't developed this guy. He's got all the raw tools to be a legitimate wide receiving threat in this league. Right. And we saw the development of Gesicki. Do you see 2 tight end sets, or is he going to be just a guy that gets sprinkled in to spot Gesicki from time to time? And you're going to have, what's his name? Durham Smythe more often, because we saw a large snap count for Smythe, and he's more of that blocking inline tight end that you need.
Lee Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Or is Shaheen going to eat into that, and you're going to go with more of that New England look?
I think we're gonna still see more Smythe than Shaheen. Shaheen is a red zone target for the most part. That from what I remember from last year, watching games from last year, is Shaheen is a guy that you want at the goal line, just like Gesicki is a guy that can go up and get the ball if it's a jump ball. They do like to use him sometimes as a decoy guy that comes out of the play action late on the block, sneaks out to the right or left and try to sneak in for a pass. But, overall, I think it's going to be Gesicki, Smythe, Shaheen, and if they have Hunter Long active, I think we're going to see some Hunter Long as well.
So obviously, you can't call a week 2 game a must win. You can't put too much emphasis on anything here.
We have to win this game.
It is a great amount of pressure. And I know, you can make a case. Miami can take a commanding, stranglehold on the division when you have a half game up on the Patriots, a half game up on the Bills, a 2-0 start. The other game is also a division game, so one of those teams is going to be 0-2 minimum, and the other will be
for sure the Jets, right? Like we all know the Jets suck. Right?
I wanted the Jets to be the Pats, but I agree it's probably going to be the Pats.
We can all pile up on them this year.
So one, what kind of pressure do you think the team is feeling in this opportunity that they have, that if you're going to take that step forward, this is the kind of game that you need to take command of that, versus, you now have a Bills team, massive expectations, massive sense of destiny for this kind of season now backed into a corner and ready to come bursting out, that they know they can't go 0-2 and be 0-2 in the conference and give up a division loss. How do you balance that kind of feeling where, this is the kind of tension and anxiety you've been wanting as a Dolphins fan for a game to matter this much?
Yeah, I think Eric Rose said it best in his press conference on Monday was, we're not looking at last year's game as revenge. We're looking at this year's game as this year's game. They're not going to worry about what happened in week 17, and they need to focus on all the things that are needed to win this game against a really good football team. Well coached, tons of talent. The Dolphins know what's at stake. Is it a week 2 game? Yeah. Is it going to matter down the road? Absolutely. Division game is something that is going to be looked at. If there's a tie at the end of the year, you have to have division wins. And getting off to a 2-0 start, like you said, Greg, is big. 2-0 in the division is even bigger. Yeah. And as Aaron said, the Jets stink. So consider maybe a 4-0 record before the next couple games play, at the end of the year with the Bills on Halloween and the Patriots at the end of the year. So getting a win in week 2 is huge.
So on that note, what do you think we're going to see on Sunday? Give us a prediction.
I've gone back and forth on this because,
we won't tell your friends if you pick the Bills. We won't blast it all the way.
Yeah, no, don't worry. At the end of the day, I don't think Miami is ready for that step yet against Buffalo. I don't think they're ready to make that leap this early in the season to say they are ahead of Buffalo in regards of the current season. I think Buffalo is got more offensively. I think Josh Allen is going to pose a big problem with his legs, getting him, I think Buffalo is going to try to move him around a lot, and that buys him more time. And when he has more time, he absolutely destroys defenses. We saw that last year. We saw that against the Dolphins twice. I think they just don't have an answer just yet. I hope I'm wrong, but I think Buffalo will win this game. I'm going to say 27-20.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate it, man. Obviously, this is a bigger game than I think maybe we anticipated, but it's fun. I tell people all the time, I grew up, the Dolphins were my rivalry. Like, it was Kelly and Marino. That was my hated team growing up. My uncle is a Dolphins fan, and his son is a Dolphins fan. It was always back and forth.
Ricky Williams running all over us.
Yeah, like that's. I want.
I was at that game.
Oh.
I want that back. So let the folks know where they can find you, what's going on in Dolphins Talk, and what they can expect going into the season.
You guys can find me at Dolphins Talk Tom on Twitter. DolphinsTalk.com is our website. We've got pods every single day, articles, great staff. Very thankful for being with this group. We've got a ton of new things coming this year. New shows, got gambling shows. We've got some other fun things, and we just got announced that we're with the Miami Dolphins. We're doing an article for them.
Congratulations!
Yeah, congrats, man.
Podcast is being promoted by them as well. So this is a big year for us, and hopefully we can get everything to work on our end.
Appreciate it, man. Best of luck, and hope for an entertaining game this week. And I hope you're
healthy.
Right, so.
A healthy game.
Yes, healthy game.
Healthy game, no injuries. And Greg, I'm looking forward to seeing what your 1/11th will be this week. I might join you. I might do something myself just to kind of have some fun.
I like it. I'll look for it. Later, Tom. Thank you, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, man.
I always love having the guys from Dolphins Talk on, and it's fun. I feel better if he picked the Dolphins to win. I don't like it that he also is picking the Bills to win.
It feels like last week all over again.
Yeah. Oh God, it's painful. But it's this is what's happening. The teams. We talked about it leading into the season. All three teams in the division are getting better. That obviously the Jets didn't get up to
at some point. The
start
Jets will
last week. It may be someday, but I think Joe Douglas is a smart man. I think that eventually Robert Saleh is going to be a good coach. But overall, the division is getting better. The Dolphins amassed too many assets not to hit on some of them, and I've twisted the knife a little bit. That I'm thankful. I think they've squandered some of the ridiculous draft capital that they collected. but they haven't missed on all of them. There's some talent on this team. Guys like Raekwon Davis was a monster. Christian Wilkins is a really good football player. Jalen Phillips is a good football player. Their secondary is legit. Like, they have 5, 6 NFL caliber guys where Needham and the crazy named Ogbenigene was the guy, he's now a backup, and it was a first-round pick last year. And they just have a ton of depth and talent there, and I think the Bills are going to be, just like I said, kind of a cornered animal and ready to come out, and that I'm not, it's not just, coach speak that I think that was a wake-up call. I think that maybe the team was reading their press clippings a little bit and looking ahead and not taking that week-by-week approach that had been so valuable for them over the years under McDermott. And I'm hopeful that it's going to snap them back to reality. But we need to see it. We need to see it on the field.
I don't even know that I think it ended up being a really bad matchup last week. The weakness, we've talked about it a bunch on this show, the weakness of this team is the offensive line. I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was with Deion Dawkins personally. And at times, Darrell Williams, I thought that those were more strengths on the outside, but definitely the interior offensive line. We knew that's a weakness. And we can get to it when we do our player spotlight. If we want to roll that up, the player spotlight is going to be that interior offensive line. And I think that that was really where that game was won for the Steelers. And I don't think it was the Bills came out and were sleeping on the Steelers, because the defense had a great game. The Bills defense had a great game. They had multiple opportunities to win that game. Josh just was never comfortable. He never had a chance to get comfortable in that game. And I'm not trying to take the blame off of Josh Allen for that loss. He had his own faults in that game too, but I've watched it back now. Obviously, I haven't watched the full coaches film because it came out so late, but watching it back in the condensed version over and over again, you're seeing the interior offensive line just get manhandled. And even on the plays, I hate to say Josh was seeing ghosts, but sort of even on the plays where they did do their job, he just didn't feel comfortable. He knew someone was coming at every moment. And I love Christian Wilkins. I'm really happy that Roquan's out this game, but you're not going to face a Cam Hayward again the rest of the season. You're not going to face these guys week in and week out, and so I don't think the bleeding will be as bad going forward.
Well, yes. So there's multiple phases to that, where when they talk about people seeing ghosts, that's very rarely is it just completely fabricated and simply the quarterback, just seeing things that aren't there. It's because you're getting battered so much that then you start to default into assuming that pressure is coming even when it's not. And that's what the reality of seeing ghosts is. It's very rarely is a guy just, completely bailing on clean pockets when there's no reason to think that. But if you start to get battered and hit the way that Josh was, you get into the third and fourth quarter, of course you're going to start to see ghosts, because, hey, I've watched Cam Hayward whip the crap out of the guy in front of me for the past 35 snaps. On the 36th one, I'm going to default that, hey, I'm pretty sure he's coming this time, and you're going to bail out that half second early. You're not going to be as confident to stay in there and step into that throw. They have to give him a chance to reassure that. And with this, our player spotlight for our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's, it's the guard spot. And it's not just John Feliciano. I think that a
lot of it is.
He rightfully got, the hard end of it, because, as anybody who watched some of the clips that Eric put together, it was as bad as you thought or worse. Like it was the worst performance we've seen from him, and he's had some other rough performances. This was his worst performance we've seen in a Bills uniform. The weird part was Cody Ford was actually pretty good. Like it was one of Cody Ford's better performances, or less bad. I think it's easy when you see somebody else getting manhandled the way that he was. It's easy to then look less bad. Eichbacher only got, 2 drives and only 7 or 8 plays, so he didn't look good.
So gave up some pressures.
And they didn't put him back in, so his ratios were just as bad, and they didn't like what they saw in the 2 drives, but it's odd that they never gave him a shot. Instead of Feliciano, they only rotated with Ford. We talked
still not going to get.
Yeah, so I want to take it that direction, in that we talked on Twitter about, hey, it's a really drastic move to look at hey, let's move Darrell Williams into guard and put in Spencer Brown. Let's move Ryan Bates into guard when he's pretty much only practiced at center and swing tackle. How long is that leash for you before we need to get more creative than we'd prefer?
This is a tough one. So I got to think of what Sean McDermott has run his team like in the past. And I think as frustrating as it can be to fans, I think he's going to stick with guys longer, I think, than we want, and allow some of the lumps to work out. He's done it with Levi Wallace. He's done it with a number of guys. Taron Johnson got a lot of run that when people didn't want him in there. I think that he's unfortunately going to stick with some version of this rotation of Botker kicking in at some point, Ford and Feliciano as your main guards. I don't see anything in free agency or trade possibility. Guard is tough in the league. There's so much assets and allocation to the tackle position and the center position. There's not a lot of great guards, and when you have one, you try to keep them. Like, every team wants to just keep their interior offensive linemen that they have, and so I think unfortunately this is a long-term Achilles heel for this team. I know all the talk last year was we need a cornerback too. That's why we got beat. I still thought after that AFC Championship game, I know Tyreek Hill blazed our cornerbacks, and everybody saw that and they're like, oh, that's the thing we need to fix. I still thought it was more Chris Jones dominated our interior offensive line, and that was still my number one priority. It was my number one priority going into the draft last year. It was my number one priority into free agency. It hasn't been addressed, and I don't think they see in the same way we do that Bates is an option for that. I think they like the idea of having him just squarely as that backup center, especially with Mitch Morse has some injury history, and at any point he could go down. And I don't know that they want to swing Feliciano into center. I think they want to keep him over at guard. And then the moving pieces around, I understand where it comes from. I get why people have those conversations on Twitter. I just think it's harder to do on the fly without a full off season of getting Spencer Brown those reps and getting Darrell Williams working at guard and communicating with Mitch Morse. There's a lot of that goes into it in terms of communication and continuity. Eric Wood has spoken about that a number of times. And so it sounds good, especially when you see a struggle like we did. Hopefully they are able to patch it together. I don't think Feliciano is ever going to be anything other than replacement level. I said it a number of times though on this pod. If he's the weakest link, not at what we saw this last weekend, but at replacement level that we've seen
correct
sort of throughout his career, if Cody Ford can continue to develop, it might take weeks for Cody to really hit his stride. I do think Deion Dawkins is going to bounce back. I think Darrell Williams will be fine. I don't know that you're going to have games where everybody's kind of a weak link like we saw this week, but I think you can hide a John Feliciano if everybody else is playing up to where we know they can play. Where we've seen Deion Dawkins play at a borderline all-pro level. We saw the first half of the season last year, PFF had Darrell Williams as an all-pro. And if Cody plays the way he did this last week, you can work with one replacement level guy. Look at this Miami offensive line. This is all replacement level dudes on the Miami offensive line, and they're going to make it through an entire season. It's not ideal, but sometimes we have to pull it back a little bit. This is how offensive lines are pretty much around the league. Everybody's got a John Feliciano along their line somewhere that's a liability. You're worried when they go up against a superior player. And if the rest of the guys on that line are good enough, you can hide it. And so I think that's going to be what Sean McDermott, Bobby Johnson focus on is we got to get Deion back. We got to get Darrell Williams back to playing at the levels they are. And then maybe this isn't such a glaring thing moving forward.
Just to give myself extra credit for the comment I made earlier. The reason that Miami's offensive line is replacement level guys is because they're all day one or day two picks and just haven't been very good. So they're replacement level in talent, like in performance.
Not an asset allocation.
It's actually first round pick, second round pick, third round pick, second round pick, first round pick, second round pick. But either way. So yeah, I know that the idea of kicking Williams into guard and putting in Spencer Brown is the ultimate Madden franchise solution. Yeah. Like that's not, and we talked through it, and I certainly fell victim to it as well in that, hey, do we need to consider this? Is that crazy? And the more you think, like, one, Darrell Williams was really bad at guard. Like his worst performance as an NFL player was at guard. And that, yes, he was injured. There were some other things that season. It's easy to fall into, then we joked around with the George Carlin line, this week of, it's easy to say, well, putting Spencer Brown in a right tackle can't be worse than John Feliciano was at guard. And well, it can be. Like, you never know. Yep. Anything can be worse. So obviously we need better performance at guard. And part of that is also John Feliciano, and that he simply needs to be better. And I think Chris is right here, and we appreciate it very much for the contribution. It's, we do simply need competent NFL offensive line play. It does not have to be exceptional. I'd love exceptional offensive line play. We just need competent NFL line play, because the talent we have everywhere else on offense is elite and exceptional in many spots, and that if we have competent NFL line play, it's perfectly reasonable. And we've seen better than competent from Deion Dawkins, better than competent from Darrell Williams, better than competent from Mitch Morris. And then we just need a baseline level from the guards. Don't have what we had last week, where you are single-handedly letting another player take over the game. And that, in some metrics, Cam Hayward had one of the best defensive line performances in a decade. It was 12 pressures in one game is astronomical. Like, that is a unbelievable amount to have in one game. And that, we'll see where it goes, but that's the reason we made it the player spotlight here. And that, it certainly was a dangerous level of concern, and that I needed some Uncle Jumbos after that game. But it's something that I think is very reasonable for many aspects. One, getting the film, Feliciano resetting his footwork. There were some good comments in the chat about, Michael Luke, you're not wrong though. I mean, that when people say it can't get worse, it can.
Yeah.
And that I know part of that is simply understanding where those things, shift week to week. But part of it also is the Dolphins don't have Cam Hayward, and I'm a fan of Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is not Cam Hayward.
And when you don't have a TJ Watt and an Ingram, there's more you can do to help out. And if everyone, that's my point, is I think, the people that want drastic changes, Sean McDermott has shown time and time again that they're going to first try with developing their own guys and helping them schematically. Right. And trying to find ways schematically within the guys that they have to take some of that pressure off of them. And teams like Miami are a great opportunity to do that, where you don't have to focus a lot of attention on a TJ Watt or Ingram and a superior player in Cam Hayward. You can focus a little bit more on a Christian Wilkins or Agba, like you said. And I don't think it's going to be manhandled at the point. Almost every other play, one of those guys was going off. You're not going to get that this weekend. Yeah.
So there's one more piece that we haven't really touched on from last week that I'm anticipating a pretty significant shift this week. And it was the amount of 5 wide empty and 10 personnel that we saw last week. And we had talked before that, hey, based on talent and how they use the tight end group, could we lean in even more? And that last year we were the second highest in 10 personnel, with 14.9%, we'll call it 15%, and right up there in 5 wide personnel, which is like 1 to 2%. Well, this past week, we ran 10 personnel like 34%. We ran 5 wide empty with 5 wide receivers, 0 tight ends, 0 running backs, 9% of the time, which is crazy. It was 44% total of 4+ wide receivers on the field. Last year, that was 16%. We ran at 44%. And now a lot of people are listening going, oh, that's awesome. You ratcheted up. Let's go. We were pitiful. It was dreadful. All of the 3 and outs were with 5 wide and 4 receivers on the field. Our 11 personnel performance was double the output in yardage and performance and scoring and everything that was there. All of the successful runs later and all the successful passes were out of that. Part of it, I do think, was the inability to chip and help in protection.
Right.
But that's also why you run 11 personnel. All those little like semi-pistol huddles or backfields that you see Dawson Knox behind the guard. Yeah, that's pretty helpful for him to pick up the blitzer and to be in there to be able to block.
Or even just get a shoulder on a guy. And that was some of my frustration watching the film is when they had it spread out, and I like the spread and I want more passing offense, but there's a reason teams are 60-40 and that you don't see the 10 personnel the way the Bills ran it, because when you go up against teams like this, it was, I don't know that Daboll got too cute with play calling. I think there was a little bit of hubris, and you're good at what you're doing and we're good at what we're going to do, and we're going to line up and attack you with what we do. But there's so many times where even if Ingram just got chipped, not blocked, just slowed up for a second, or TJ Watt, the play changes. And I wanted to see a little bit more of that. And I do think you see more of that going forward against more dynamic teams for sure.
Well, and there's things that people take for granted that, running 11 personnel dictates having a second linebacker on the field. It dictates some of the personnel. It gives you a chance to chip and not to know who's in the route. When you're out there in that 5 wide empty sets, you're letting them run all coverage people and dime looks and all full secondary looks, where they kept bringing in some of those other secondary players that I think a lot of Bills fans weren't familiar with that played really well. And you never got, guys who weren't good in coverage isolated, and then they're getting pressure with that front four. I anticipate we go back to more of that 73-74% 11 personnel that we saw last year that was incredibly successful, and sprinkle in some of the 4 wide and 5 wide. It's fine to throw it out there every once in a while. I also thought we got away from some of the jet motion, and maybe some of it was Isaiah McKenzie's injury and that maybe they were simply limited, but they had Breida. I would like to see more of that. We had it sprinkled in here, but it wasn't the percentages we saw previously. We still did okay in play action, but I still thought we could have done a little bit more there. You can't do play action when it's an empty backfield. So I thought, too cute was thrown around a lot in terms of the 4th down plays and some of the trick plays with the flea flicker. I thought too cute was an accurate description, the way you described that, hey, we're the Buffalo Bills. We have 5 really talented wide receivers. I bet you can't guard them. And
right.
Pittsburgh did.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to see, and this is sort of counter to what Twitter wants to see, is working in the run game more often earlier on. I know the Bills had success a year ago where they'd have games where they came out and threw it 17 times in a row and moved down the field. And that's fine. If you want to come out on your scripted plays and put together and say, hey, we want to really explode and try to get on the board and move the ball down the field and get some explosive plays. But when that's not clicking and you're stuck at 2 explosive plays and one's a kick return and one's, a run, you need to try to get the ball going on the run. I know it doesn't set up play action or anything like that, but you have a back in Devin Singletary who his rookie year led the league in explosive plays as a running back. Like, you can still gain some of that explosive play you're looking for out of the run game. I would like to see a little bit more of that sprinkled in outside of those scripted plays versus what they were trying to do, where they're almost to a stubborn level coming out and just throw. I know people want a passing league. I still want it 60-40. At the end of the year, I want it to come back to the mean and be right around 60-40. I think that's the path to victory for this team. I'd like to see Zach Moss activated in this game, especially if you're not going to really use Breida in the ways that we thought they were going to use him. I think Zach Moss offers you some of that short yardage stuff that where they got a little cute in the short yardage stuff and had trouble picking up some of the 3rd and shorts. Zach Moss is the only back on the team outside of Josh Allen that has the type of size and the type of running style that's going to get you a 3rd and 3, that's going to get you a 3rd and 2. And those are important. We saw it here this last week to keep drives sustained. And then you're not putting Sean McDermott in these positions of, you're kind of at the 45. Do I kick? Do I punt? What do I do? Converting on those 3rd and shorts is important. They've been able to convert on 3rd and longs here the last couple of years with Josh, but getting those 3rd and shorts, super important to this team. So establishing a little bit more in the run game. And last week is not probably the measuring stick to judge how this team's going to hold up against the Miami front 7, because I don't know that they felt the comfort even late in the game. They got some of those runs, but I think Pittsburgh sort of allowed some of that to happen. And yeah, you can run the ball at this point in the game. We have the lead. So I'm interested to see if they can establish the run against a weaker defense, if they can be more true to themselves without the amount of pressure coming from that front 7. And then that'll give us a real barometer. Is this offense taking any type of, I hate to say it, are they taking any type of regression back to where they were, or was this just a really bad matchup against a team that just came out and was firing on all cylinders? Because that's really what I think it was. This game, as much as we've analyzed this week 1 game, Pittsburgh's a playoff team. I think they're better than both I watched that New England and Miami game. It wasn't a pretty game. Neither one of those teams looked good to me. They both look sloppy. They both look inconsistent. Pittsburgh is a very good team, and the Bills had multiple chances to win that game. That blocked punt changed everything.
The Bills played sloppy. The Steelers executed their game plan to perfection.
Yes.
And the Bills should have still won that game.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not all that bad.
Yeah, and there was a few chances to get a little bit closer to field goal range that they didn't quite get into. Like there's 4 or 5 plays that changed the outcome of that game totally. The Bills were very much in it. It's not like the Packers that got totally blown out in all 3 phases of a game and looked pathetic against an opponent.
Never had a chance to win at any point in that game.
Absolutely. The Bills had a chance right up till really into the 4th quarter. That the game was still very much in the balance. And so it was, I think, tougher.
The Bills were that far away from blocking a punt of their own. If the
absolutely.
Steelers ended up that close and the Bills blocked the punt, all of a sudden we're talking about, man, we can't afford to, play with fire like that again. We didn't deserve to win that game. Right. We let them get too close. Yes. Just like last year where, I laid out the stat lines between the 2 games. If Taron Johnson doesn't take that pick 6 back last year,
absolutely,
that's not that same kind of game. We won by the same margin that the Steelers won this week, and they had the punt return. It was a very similar game.
Josh said it going into the week. These games are big heavyweight fights. Like it's hard to get the ball moving. So we should have expected it. I think it feels worse because of the hype we got from the national media. I think myself included, all the 100%. Content creators bought right into the hype and said, we're going to come out. And I predicted a 10-point victory. And I had people telling me that wasn't enough. Like, oh yeah, you're crazy. That's not enough. The Steelers
35-10. Well,
absolutely.
And then add to that when they had 54 yards at halftime and 0 points, I was like, oh my gosh, they're just going to pull away as this game goes. Right. At halftime, I was genuinely expecting like 27-3. Like I thought, okay, they're going to score 2-3 more times in the second half.
And then we'll be out of here. We'll have a fun post-game show.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Maybe we give up some garbage time. It's going to be like 27-10. This isn't going anywhere. And then, just tripping over themselves. And like I said, it's one game. It's one game out of 17. It's that kind of, hopefully, a wake-up call. Not that it has to be the same as the Hail Murray game, but, that kind of wake-up call to be able to get into this week. We are going to see what this team is made of. We are going to see if it was what we needed it to be. And it's as close to a must-win as you can get in week 2. Week 2 is never going to be a true must-win game, but it's as close as you can get in week 2 to dig a hole. 0-2, two losses in conference, a loss to a division team, giving you'd basically be giving the Dolphins a 2.5 game lead already early on.
Yeah, Don Keith had put a stat. I don't know what the actual stat is. I think when teams start 0-2, it's I think like 10-12%. She said is right around there, 10 to 15%.
No team has made the playoffs the last 3 years starting 0-2. So people throw it out there historically, but everybody that's made the playoffs the last 2 years have been 2-0 or 1-1.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about sort of tripping over yourselves, this is not the week to do it. I'd asked Tom, you watch you watch Dolphins games throughout the years. Their path to victory in games is allowing you to make mistakes and them not making a ton of mistakes. So Bill's got to clean up the penalties. That's something we didn't even touch on a whole lot here. They got to clean up those. They can't make the mistakes that they made a week ago. You got to come down and at least play clean. I think if they play clean, on paper, we should have no problem beating this team by multiple scores. It's going to be, do the Bills beat themselves from the pressure of trying to make sure they don't go 0-2? Right.
So, Don, I need to know your prediction because you did call the Steelers win last week. I'm going to give you your shine here. But Aaron and I will go first.
Sure.
Aaron, I went first last time, so we'll change it up.
Yeah.
What is your prediction for this week? What are we going to see?
So I do think the Bills come out and handle business. I think I believe in the mental toughness of this team. I believe in all the cliches that we see, the leadership council, the process, all these things. Sean McDermott's pissed. He was pissed after that postgame. He was more mad than you were. Yes. And it was not a fun week to be at One Bills Drive watching film. You could see it in their eyes in the press conference. These guys get it. They know what's up. They know the importance of this game. I think they go down to Miami. They know it's not as bad of a matchup. I have it 31-20. And again, I think Dolphins probably score late to make it seem a little bit closer than it is. But I think Josh is just too much for them. I think Stephon gets going. I think Beasley doesn't have the drops we saw. Emmanuel Sanders makes up for some of what he did. I think there's just too many weapons, too much spacing. And they're just not going to be able to get at Josh in the way that we saw this last week. And that's still going to be a problem down the road for teams that can get at Josh. I don't think the Miami Dolphins are that team.
So you picked 31-20. Mine is way different than yours. I picked 30-21.
We didn't even talk about this.
No, we did. So as soon as you said it, I started chuckling. I agree. I think that this is a game that the Bills control. I don't know that they're going to jump out in a dominant fashion right off. There's probably some anxiety early. I don't think they're going to shut out Miami, and I don't think so because I am a little nervous about Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller. We do not have an athlete on this football team who are of the same athletic caliber speed-wise as what both Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller are. They're going to hit a big play, just like we were worried about with Chase Claypool last week, and we talked about it. You know, those are elite, high-level athletes. It's a challenge for the Bills to just shut that out for an entire game. We did it for a half last week. We shut out the Steelers and shut down their offense for a half, and then eventually they got it rolling. Well, the Bills defense still held them to 16 points, and 16 points is the kind of performance that the Bills are going to win 9 times out of 10, if not more. I think it's going to be relatively similar this week. We're not shutting out the Dolphins. They are going to get a score. They are going to be able to move the ball. They have some playmakers. It's going to make us
really
anxious and nervous a couple times. Exceptional kicker, some good special teams, Jakeem Grant and guys like that. Jalen Waddle back there with punts is going to make me anxious. I do think we win. And fortunately for the Buffalo Bills, our prognosticator from last week, Dawn, also believes that the Buffalo Bills are going to win in a dominant fashion, 32-10. I like her confidence. I'm excited about it. Got lots of other guys, a lot of confidence here in the chat. 42-24. Jason's got him 27-17. Lone Wolf 27-23. Right there. Lone Wolf's right there in Vegas zone. He's been reading the lines. So it's going to be something in that realm. I do feel better about this game, and I, as it was happening, I was rooting for the Dolphins to win last week because I wanted them coming in a little bit high, and I wanted this game to matter just a little bit more.
They tripped their way into that win, too.
Yeah, it was, like you said, it was not a pretty game. I watched it on the condensed version twice. Yeah. Neither of these teams are great. They're both fine. They both have talent. They're both good. Yep. I wouldn't be shocked if one of them snuck into a wild card spot. I won't be shocked if neither of them make the playoffs.
Yep.
The Bills should win this game. They should go 3-1 in that stretch out of those 4 games, and they should beat the Jets twice. The Bills should go 5-1 in division. Yep. They're a better, more talented team than those squads.
If you're the team that the national media has hyped us up to be, and that we all think that this team is, you got to win this game decisively. Exactly what we're talking about, the 30-21. You got to win this game by multiple scores, and outside of maybe initial anxiety of that game, by the second half, not close. Like it shouldn't be a close game if you are who we think you are.
Absolutely, 100%. So we appreciate it, guys. It's been good. We need this to come back. We need to be able to get this rolling. The chat, you guys were awesome tonight. Really, really excited about it. Make sure to check out our new friends over at Colby Development LLC. It's a local Buffalo company. You're going to be able to enjoy that very much. Make sure to check out our friends over at Handsome Jack, local band. I've had Roll It in my head for like a week. It's been fantastic. It was like the highlight of my Sunday after the game. It was great to listen to it. I listened to it a bunch more times this week. Make sure you downloading the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code COVER1. Get yourself $10 free after you make a deposit. And obviously, stock up on Uncle Jumbo's. Get yourself ready for the game. We're going to be very, very excited. We've got you ready for shows. We made some lineup changes. You're going to see some shows on different nights here as we're getting ready into the season. Have some lead-ins to Monday Night Football, some lead-ins to Thursday Night Football. Get you ready as things get rolling. But we're going to be there with 5 different shows for you all week long, ready to keep you full of content. And then the post-game show after each game with the 6th show every single week ready for you. Aaron and I will be back with Anthony Prohaska. If the Bills lose again, unfortunately, Anthony's going to have to get fired because he's clearly the bad luck.
His fault, yeah.
But, those are the risks of running a business here. So we appreciate it. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are